rolling.
Hi,
So,
good. Oh.
hi. Good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm at least fantastic.
All right, great. So I think we just want to start off so we get everything correct. Can you just state your name again and then spell it for us, and then tell us who you're with and what you do?
Certainly. My name is Andrew Williams Jr. That's Andrew Williams Jr. Andrew Williams Jr. I'm the president of 5 Points Youth Foundation, and that is spelled out FIVE. PointsYouthFoundation.org is where you can find us online.
Great. And can you tell us a little bit about where we're standing today?
We're actually standing in what's called 5 Points Alley. We reclaimed this entire alley space. If you were here 18 months ago, you would not be able to see the other end. All this was covered with grass and debris, and the sides were covered, all this was wall covered with plants. So we had a team with Tyrone Adams and the Power of Green. They actually came out and spent 8 weeks in digging up everything here. We actually had people here from LMU, the Loyola Marymount University, the Magi's. They do community service, so they've been part of our team. They came in and they actually were the ones that finished everything off. And then we had a city council person at that time, Bernard Parks was a city council person. So we worked with him and Mike Davis at the Department of Public Works. They actually brought out the final machinery that actually lifted everything up and took it out. We were so excited, and they were too, about what we had done, that they extended our work to the next alley. So it's clean as well. We're intending to make this what we call a regenerative alley. And regenerative is a little different than sustainability. Sustainability means you're, of course, just trying to maintain things the way they are. But we are, in fact, in a food desert. So the idea is to develop plans and programs that not just maintain the status quo, but are able to regenerate themselves in order to involve not just maintaining. Sustainability means you're going to maintain the conditions so that future generations won't suffer. Whereas regenerative means actually you're taking an integrated whole community approach, and you're involving all of the species of life. So our intent here is to let this become a community resiliency center, so that we can show people how we can take advantage of underutilized space and convert that into living places, but more so growing places. The most important thing we have to do, I think, is learn how to grow locally. So the idea is to make this an example where people can have urban gardening experiences, and children can come in. And we actually, all of our plantings were done by kids. They came in from schools, they got their hands dirty, they actually came out and planted the seeds, they came out and watered the seeds. So the kids were the first ones to actually learn how to grow the foods here. So we want to expand that, particularly as we're doing now, by bringing technology into the scenario, so that what we're doing locally can be expanded, not just throughout this neighborhood council, but throughout the entire county of Los Angeles and globally. We work with partners through the Encounter think tank that allows us to have input from the pod pioneers. They're called podpioneers.com and plentyforall.net. Their focus is on growing food for all. That's it. So with Andrew Douglas here, my namesake, we're hoping to make this an urban resiliency center.
Can you talk a little bit more about your organization and why you picked this alley in particular?
Well, in the first place, 5 Points Youth Foundation, we've never been government funded. We've always been privately funded. And the people that are here are doing it because they care and they have a heart. When we, 2 years ago, in 2012, when we came to this location, as I said, there was really no business activity here. So we wanted to provide a place for small businesses to be able to come ship, have postal mailboxes. Particularly we have a strong homeless population in our area. And we also have a lot of homeless veterans, unfortunately. So we wanted to provide a place where they could at least have a presence and identity, a place where they could come to know, well, my mail is safe, my things are safe, this is my identity. So the idea is to open up what we have here so it does in fact become part of the community. As far as where we are right now physically, we were gifted with this, so to speak. It came along at first. We thought it was going to be a detriment because, of course, no one could come out here. There was nothing to do. We just kind of ignored it. But when we began working with the Power of Green and Tyrone Adams, they have a focus on using solar power to portable solar energy to develop systems. So when they came out and saw what we were doing, They pitched in so that we actually at one point had a portable solar generator here, and we used that in everything we were doing. Online, we developed a curriculum, a free solar curriculum. So we'd like to do the same thing with this alley. We would like to actually begin from the beginning and have urban farming begin to be documented and videotaped so that people in the local area can see what we're doing and then hopefully become involved with it as well.
This is very similar to kind of a conversation we had in Marcella's class a little earlier today, but I was wondering if you could speak to it directly. Can you talk about how your organization, its location here, even this Resiliency Center becomes a part of the economic development of the community?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you asked that. Just maybe 3 years ago, Brad Carson, another of our partners, he invited us to attend the United Job Creations Council. They invited the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation out. And they came out and talked about the statistics and about the importance of international trade to our local community. Unfortunately, there was no statistics about this area. There was not enough data about this area. So our intent is to actually take a look at what's already going on. The economic development plan, there is an economic development plan actually for Los Angeles County. They developed it actually from 2016 to 2020. It's Googleable. But that's a subset of the state of California. They have a workforce development plan, a 6-year strategic plan. So what we're looking to do here now is actually to make this a model of where we're able to demonstrate how we can kind of upskill America. When you came in, you noticed Mr. Vasquez. He's from IXL magazine. So we're installing a computer up front where anyone can come in and develop not just workforce development skills, but needs assessment to determine what their skills are, and then walk them through a process online where they can learn how to improve their skills. We believe the digital economy, or what the World Economic Forum calls the fourth industrial revolution that we're in, it has to be engaged at a local level. So what we're striving to do here is make this place a local place. We're looking to source global solutions locally, and then and then vice versa, global solutions locally. So the idea from economic development standpoint is to have the people that are participating with this make this a commitment for them for a lifetime. The idea is that we are now in a transition from the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, where you had a few richer countries decided what they were going to, quote, do to help the poorer countries. But in 2012, as the Mayans predicted, the world didn't end, so to speak. But in my opinion, we entered an extinct level event horizon, where the climate change and the impacts of climate change, you can see it all over your television, you know, they're happening locally. So the transition in 2012, it actually began it's a Rio Plus 20 summit that was held. That was a follow-up to the Global Climate Change Conference. Now, they were disappointed in 2012 because the outcome they were expecting was that major countries would commit to efforts that would positively affect the climate. This didn't happen. But out of that conversation grew the Bacata Agreement, and that's what led to a 3-year process of involving millions of people around the world to determine what the world we want, is the catchphrase they used. So that impacted the development of the Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 of them. The number one, though, is the intent to eliminate poverty in all its forms everywhere. So we at 5 Points Youth Foundation, one of the first moves I made, I became president of November 7th, 2014. That was the 30th anniversary of the founding of the organization. But right then I began registering 5 Points Youth Foundation with the United Nations Global Compact. It was in 1999 that Kofi Annan, he brought to the World Economic Forum the idea about a corporate sustainability movement, because you had corporations, particularly multinational corporations, that were involved with local communities around the world, but they were not taking care of the local conditions or the local people. So they developed a set of 10 principles that corporations would use when they work in communities. That started out with just a handful. It's grown now to the largest corporate social responsibility movement worldwide. There are 8,000 major multinational corporations. They balance that with 4,000 civil society is what they call. Now that's very interesting, Gunther, because it was George Kell, who you may or may not know, but he was the founder of that organization in 2000. He maintained consistency for the next 15 years. So where there were changes all around the world, and there were multiple changes throughout the United Nations as a whole, The United Nations Global Compact has maintained the consistency all that time. What we're striving to do is double the number of civil society organizations in the United Nations Global Compact to balance off the corporate interests. So our interests there are 5 subcategories. One is, of course, non-governmental organizations or in nonprofits, as we are. But another very interesting one is labor associations. So then you have business associations like chambers of commerce, things like that. But you also have schools and educational institutions, right? But the final one is cities. So you actually have a component for each of these types of organizations to work together. Now, and the first set of Millennium Development Goals, number 8 was Global Partnerships for Development. That was the kind of catch-all phrase where everyone comes together to work together to get these things done. Now, when it transitioned to the Sustainable Development Goals, now it's still the last one, it's number 17, but it's focused on what they call multi-stakeholder partnerships to localize its Sustainable Development Goals. So here at 5 Points Youth Foundation, Gunther, this is actually our attempt to demonstrate locally that we do have, in fact, a responsibility to adapt these changes in our local community.
So you talked a little bit about local empowerment. I'm going to maybe ask the same question in a different way.
Okay.
Can you tell me what you think this new grassroots economic development model looks like?
Well, yes, and I would have to tell you that my vision is impacted by ongoing surrounding activities and people I'm involved with, like through the Encounter group, for example. Now with Brad Carson, who's a member of our group, he invited me about 5 weeks ago to attend a group meeting called Faith in Action. This was to focus on solutions on Death Alley. There is just about 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks down the street, Vermont Avenue. On Vermont Avenue from Imperial Highway to Manchester Boulevard, about a mile stretch, that's where you have the highest density of murders in Los Angeles County, and that has been done for quite some time. So the groups of churches there, they're surprisingly about 200 storefront churches in this little small little area. So Faith in Action actually was reaching out to involve those churches in a commitment to open their doors other than just on Sunday, so that the people in the community could actually come out and they could do things to help them. Now, this was running concurrently with another movement. You may have heard of it, the Snoop, the Game. They met with Mayor Eric Garcetti and police chief. And I was there again with Brad Carson on July 17th when you had 1,500 people from the community to come out to actually say what they wanted to see, right? Now, as far as economic development is concerned, that is in fact what the community has determined is the root cause of the poverty that we're dealing with, the crime that we're dealing with, the food deserts that we're dealing with, and so that has to be dealt with at a local basis, local level. So I'm part of the organizing committee, and so out of the 35 different items that they identified of things that had to happen to empower the local community, one of those was, well, the first one was a removal of banging, banging, but not just gangbangers banging, churches banging, banging, bureaucracy banging, politicians banging, in other words, creating a problem instead of creating a solution. So there were 3 major areas that came out of that. They were discussed and agreed upon. One is, the first one is literacy. And that included not just learning how to read, although that's a very important part of it, but also understanding cultural literacy and the fact that where we are now, the demographics have changed completely in the last 20 years. Now rather than there being 75% African American population and 20% Hispanics and 8% others, it's completely flipped. So we have a challenge to bring together cultures together. At the meeting I attended, we had people there from what's called Hombres Unidos, which is actually the leader was based from El Salvador. So he understands that what we're going through right here, as far as the gangbanging is concerned, is nothing like what they're experiencing in El Salvador on a daily basis with murders, et cetera, all those things, corruption, all those things. So literacy was the first. The second was actually job creation and entrepreneurship. So again, that's what we're looking to do here. We're actually looking to create a living alley where you have food growing, of course, but that's labor intensive. So the idea is to have people learn how to grow food as a means that they can not only grow food in their own homes, but we can actually grow food to sell. So we're looking at a full cycle of again, regenerative solutions right here. And the final step there were three parts. So peace building and peacemaking was a part of that. Um, the challenge that was faced here in Los Angeles is duplicated around the country. The co-founders of this movement, Tony Muhammad was one. He has been making trips to 50 other cities around the United States, basically facing the same crime problems, violence problems, particularly in the African American communities. So the idea is to raise the consciousness of these peoples as we do it here. So they've all agreed that what happens in Los Angeles will be reflected throughout communities around the country. Now, part of the challenge I see is at first they were very concerned about being infiltrated, if you would, by people that didn't have the interests of the community at heart. That's a very real concern. For example, we had 85 gang interventionists that were there at the first meeting, and these were the gang interventionists that don't get paid to do their work, but they put their lives on the line every day. They were memorializing gang interventionists that had been killed by trying to do the right thing. But what's less known is that the media, which of course, there's 6 corporations that own 96% of the media, but they're driving the music, they're driving the entertainment, they're driving the imagery, they're driving all the messages into the minds of the youth. So now we have a preschool to prison pipeline. So part of the idea is to shift that consciousness with more entertaining music, more conscious music, more conscious messages. I was surprised, however, to find that this same group that was so focused on consciousness, they were not aware that there is, for example, in this area, there are 5 gang truces that are already going on that no one knew about, no one knows about, but they just happen to have a chance to come there to find out about it. At the same time, there is a sense of hopelessness on the part of the children in the area because they could not see themselves, in the first place, a lot of them couldn't see themselves living through the next 24 hours. So, but beyond that, they couldn't see where they could fit into the economic system that we're living in. So, Gunther, part of our challenge here is to address problems that have not yet been addressed. And I speak from a macro standpoint. In the United States, over 97% of the businesses, they're driven by small businesses or small and medium businesses, right? And now when you think about small businesses, you think neighborhood mom and pop stores, but that's not true. These are really micro businesses with 5 or less employees. If you look at the United States, California in particular, Los Angeles in particular, it's travel, tourism, entertainment, media that drive the entire community around us. But we're disconnected here in the heart of the local community. So part of our idea is to raise the consciousness of the people here, and I have to say particularly the African American males, because they're the ones that are most at risk, they're the ones that are dying most. And this not just happening here in Los Angeles, it's not just happening here in the United States, it's happening around the world. And you think about places like Brazil, and you think about places where, like with the Rio, when the Rio Olympics came in, they shut down a lot of the favelas, the poor, the slums, if you would, of that place. Nothing new. They've been doing this for years. Same thing in South Africa when they had the Olympics there. But the point is that it was in 2012 when 54 of the 55 African countries came together for the first time and decided that they would actually recognize those of us who are of African descent that are not on the continent of Africa. It was called the Global Diaspora Conference, held in Sandtown, South Africa. What they decided to do was create a new region. Right now there are 5 regions, the North, South, East, West, and Central Africa, they're the regions. So they decided to create a 6th region of the diaspora. Now, they understood that it would be required for us to kind of self-organize to be able to interact with them as a body. So they set out 5 legacy projects that we have to involve ourselves with in order to connect together with the African Union. That's important right now for many reasons, because we're saying to the children and youth here, you don't have to subject yourself to only thinking that your only future is to assimilate into a European culture that you're not from, basically. To open your eyes to the fact that from the moment that you're born until the time, the moment that you're conceived, from the time you're conceived until the time you're actually physically born, then technically you're a global citizen. No one has a right to who you are. So at the moment of conception, you have the opportunity and the responsibility to self-identify with people around the world. this is a very important time. You were in 2016. It was on August the 20th in 1616 when the first Africans were recorded here in the United States in Hamptons, Virginia. And it, 1619, I'm sorry, 1619. But it was in 1616 when the first recorded Africans were discovered in Bermuda, the country of Bermuda, right? So there's a cultural link that could unite us and could give the children here an idea that there is a vision of the future other than what they see on the television. I say that because we're in Los Angeles. It's in Leimert Park that is now the heart of the $1.2 billion Crenshaw LAX transit line that'll be opening up in 2019, which will be, as I said, the 400th anniversary of the first Africans arriving here. So there needs to be some thought about changing all of the people in our community to become community ambassadors, so we can actually welcome people into our community from these different countries and cultures, because this is their home as well. And you'll find that only in Leimert Park right now. And I say only in Leimert Park because it was in 1992, after the civil unrest, that Leimert Park became the hub of where the arts and culture came together and people started working together as a family and as a unit. And right now, with the demographic shift, that is still the last remaining business hub right there. Now, just west of Leimert Park, you find View Park. It was just recently acknowledged as as a historic district here in Los Angeles, and it's also one of the highest. It has one of the highest per capita incomes of any African American community in the United States, according to the census tract. So, part of this conscience raising and economic development is intended to not just build businesses locally so that we have more people buying with each other, shopping with each other, but provide them the tools to connect to the global economy. And we can do that through technology. My personal relationship with Trade Tech began in 2000 when Kenneth...
Can you start that over again?
Sure.
I'm ready.
Say it a little louder.
Trade Tech architecture.
The Los Angeles Trade Tech Architectural Department in 2010 was where I was introduced first to Marcella Oliva through Kenneth Wyrick. And so that would be the beginning of my own personal understanding of what Los Angeles Trade Tech architectural students delivered. But it was, I would have to say, it was in 2013 when I was invited to participate with what they call EncounterLA at the Los Angeles Trade Tech Architectural Department, because I was asked to be part of the community advisory team. And so our task was to provide community input into the work that the students were involved with, understanding that it is really design that we are faced with here. Los Angeles also, as you may know, is one of the 100 Rockefeller resilient cities. And a few years ago, Mayor Garcetti actually launched a resiliency plan, sustainability plan is what he called it, for Los Angeles. But at Trade Tech in 2013, I believe it was, they won an award from the Metropolitan Water District because what they did was they involved all of the departments of the school in trying to accomplish this objective, and they actually won that. So I came in on the heels of that, understanding that this was a place that was demonstrating how you had different departments and different interests all working together, both from within and without the community. So that's what led to this relationship. Now, as I said, I'm pretty much I'm an ambassador for a lot of things. I'm actually a Facebook ambassador as well. In 2009, I was appointed as a Facebook ambassador because I use social media to promote causes. On Facebook, we have an Encounter think tank as well. And that's through that relationship is where I met Richard Nelson, and he's from Canada. He's the one I mentioned earlier that has a solarroof.org and plentyforall.org, and they're believing in growing, healthy foods. So Richard Nelson over the last year has done multiple hangouts with our Encounter group, so that what we're doing here locally goes globally. But I went another step with the Encounter group because I embraced the idea of what he was trying to provide. So 5 Points Youth Foundation, we're actually the fiscal administrator for Pod Pioneers, based in Canada, to bring through the Encounter group these solutions that we're developing right here.
Can you talk about the visualization? How is that going to help you?
Well, in two places. Well, the visualization, which is different than virtualization, is something I learned about at the architectural department of Trade Tech because of the involvement of Michael Rindler with the E7 Architectural Studios. I understood that the work that was done through Trade Tech, that originally 10 years or so ago, funded the E7.
Hold
It was my understanding that the work that was done through Trade Tech Architectural Department and their grant writing actually was the key to funding the E7 Architectural Studios. Now, the E7 Architectural Studios is unique in a lot of ways, but what they did was actually they used students from the Los Angeles Community College District to actually be the ones to visualize or actually virtualize $10 billion worth of construction on the campuses of the Los Angeles Community College District. Now, when I came along, they were just winding that up, but my understanding was that the virtualization that they did, when I say virtualization, this virtualization was done to Homeland Security standards, so that in planning for disasters or planning for emergencies, or even planning primarily for cradle-to-cradle building development and the entire process of what happens in the life of a building, in the life of a campus, in the life of a community. These are the high-end technological skills that I understood came through the architecture department at Trade Tech. So what they've done there is they've actually, again, worked to virtualize Los Angeles County. It's the largest geospatial database in the United States. Now, rather than leave that fallow or leave it unused, those students have also contributed to creating now the most recent South Los Angeles Transit Empowerment Zone, which is a promise zone. So technically, this is actually the only city in the country that has 2 promise zones. So it was this team that worked together using visualization techniques to create the map so the boundaries could be divided and determined what they would be. So what is important here, oh, by the way, also that same team developed the with E7 to virtualize the entire the Crenshaw LAX transit line, right? So what we're hoping is that the work done here to visualize and yeah. So recently, after the winning of the award for this Slate Z Empowerment Zone, which we understand is a model that can be replicated throughout not just the United States but internationally. The Slate Z Empowerment Zone by the Housing and Urban Development Department. There are only two there. This Los Angeles is the only city with 2 of those, right? But more importantly, with Trade Tech as a partner, there were like 54 partners that worked over 3 years to get this approved, right? Because the other empowerment zone left out South Los Angeles, right? So after the team worked together to actually develop the map, then the E7 Architectural Studios worked to virtualize the Crenshaw LAX transit line. So what the students are doing here with what we have here would then allow us to virtually become part of that ecosystem, so to speak. So in addition to just having people see what we're doing, they can Google in to actually become part of what we're doing. So that's the other part of it. The idea is that we're not just talking about what we're doing, but in taking it from where we are now to where it needs to be, that process, if we document that process, it will then encourage and empower people throughout Los Angeles with other unclaimed alleys to take that step. There are over 100 miles of alleys like this that are left fallow. So again, our intention is to be what Global Business Incubation would call a sample of the example. Relax, it's only a movie. So just because we're doing it on this one small stretch, it really won't have an impact unless we spread the word of what we're doing further than that.